Hello everyone. Today we'll be covering a kit quite a few consider to be in GRAIL territory, and one I honestly never expected to find. This is the Zaku Amazing from Gundam Build Fighters. Until I found this kit for sale while mindlessly browsing online, I had pretty much accepted that I never get this kit and had actually planned on doing a kit bash scratch build video titled something like making my own Zaku Amazing since I'll probably never find it. But I did find it, so there's no need for that. In my research to try and replicate this kit, I had a few ideas on the base. My guess was that the Amazing was based on the high-grade mobility Zakus, which was confirmed upon looking through the runners. You sort of pick up on these things when you buy enough Zakus to turn them into your social media persona, but anyways, this kit does have the problems those older mobility Zakus have, ironically being a lack of mobility. The articulation isn't on par with more modern kits like the Origin Zaku lineup or the Revive Zaku, but the base kit is from 2013, so I'm not going to be too harsh. The parts that transform the kit from a standard mobility Zaku into the Amazing are pretty well designed. There are no real faults I can think of with this kit other than it being a bit old. The dimensions are on the chunkier end, and there are lots of parts molded into halves, but honestly, it's nothing unexpected even if it is a bit annoying to remove seams. All of the additional parts give this kit a bit of bulk compared to your standard Zaku high grade. This is also my first Build Fighters kit, and one that desperately needs a reprint, just like so many others from that lineup. I really do like this design, even if the engineering is a bit dated. This kit also has a lot of weapons. You get the Zaku Amazing specific weapons, the long rifle, dual revolvers, and the heat machetes, but also some standard Zaku ones, that being the Zaku machine gun and the heat hawk. And because the base kit is the mobility Zaku, you also get a spare set of mobility Zaku legs. And now we're removing the seam lines I touched on earlier. Seam removal is pretty essential, especially on these older kits and ones with curved surfaces. The first step in seam removal is gluing the two parts together. It's important to use a lot of plastic cement. We want to really melt the parts together and have some liquid plastic spill out when we press the parts in place. The cement I use is Mr. Cement S, although Tamiya Extra Thin is a comparable substitute. You don't want anything like Mr. Cement SP or Tamiya Quick Setting Extra Thin, which evaporates before it even melts the plastic. I also use the cement to blend in the nubs with the rest of the model. When you remove parts from the runner, you can sometimes discolor the plastic, and adding a touch of cement can restore the color. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but this will get fixed later. And this is something I just learned before building this kit, and will prove helpful whenever I do more build reviews. But now it's time to sand. I covered this in more detail in that Space Jahannam review, but I use a lot of different grits of sandpaper, starting from 400 all the way to 10,000 grit. I honestly don't know if all these different grits will make a difference in the end, but I want to be careful and work up a nice shine on the plastic. One thing of note is that from 400 to 4000, I'm only sanding down the seam or the nub mark. But starting with 6000 grit, I even things out and sand the surrounding area just so the finish is uniform on those parts. As you can imagine, I did a lot of sanding and went through a lot of sponges. It would be cheaper to use sandpaper instead, but I like the smaller size of the sponges. And I don't show this on camera, but what I ended up doing was laying all of my sanding sponges out of my workbench. This allows me to work really quickly in almost an assembly line type of fashion. It's great for productivity and helps me build up a nice workflow. Included in the instructions of these Build Fighter kits are a small section with tips on making the model unique. So I'll be keeping this kit in the bare plastic to give my take on that concept. First is Decals. This is a G rework set for the high-grade Origin Zaku. I'm using it because I had already used some of the decals on a Zaku F2, which I don't have dedicated decal set for. The G rework Origin Zaku set has more decals than the Delphi one, which makes it great for cannibalizing. and at first I wasn't even planning on using decals because I tried to imagine how this kit would be used in a real life Gunpla battle if those existed. How would Tatsuya Yuki go about this? Then I realized that I should just do what I want and added the decals, which really spice things up and add some interest, something this kit needs as it lacks panel lines. I also added some stars on the head to represent wand battles, and some large 3s on the shoulder shields to represent Tatsuya Yuki becoming Meijin Kawaguchi III in the Build Fighters anime. A bit of visual storytelling I took from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I also added striping on the skirt, which isn't a perfect match for the kit, especially on the sides, but the Zaku Amazing has these skirt mounted holsters which cover up the gaps. I'm now doing a panel line. In my last video on bare plastic weathering, I did a coat of semi-gloss before this step, but the wash flowed so much better over the bare plastic. Panel lines aren't anything too crazy, and I do cover them in every painting video I make, but I do want to talk about how I clean up the excess. Admittedly, this isn't the best kit to show this, but whenever I clean up the excess, I do so in a motion perpendicular to the detail. For example, if I was cleaning up excess on a panel line, I wouldn't run my brush along the panel line, since that has the potential to remove all of the paint. But by running my brush perpendicular to a panel line, I can push the paint into the detail, emphasizing it more. A panel line is a very important step, even if you don't paint your kits. It emphasizes all the details and as a result, makes the kit seem more lifelike. Panel lines give a model depth by creating artificial shadows, and panel lines are essential, especially on new kits that have a lot of detail molded. I then gave the model a light coat of semi-gloss to protect everything, and this did great things for the model. There were some scratch marks from sanding that I just couldn't reach, as well as some of the nubs remaining discolored even though I touched them up with cement. The semi-gloss completely evened these areas out. It didn't, however, seem to fix the seams where the plastic whitened because of the glue, so it is something to watch out for the next time I do this sort of build. But now I'm doing some slight recoloring to break things up. I chose to do recoloring at this point because a figure painter once told me that Mr. Super Clear, the semi-gloss I use, works as a primer, and they're right. It actually makes a lot of sense as this clear is very durable and can be used on different materials. The recoloring I do is pretty standard stuff. I repainted the mono eye pink and the inside of the thrusters yellow, but I did paint the top of the mouth area black. It's something that some of the Xeon Ace Zakus have on their custom mobile suits like Eric Manfield's or Robert Gilliam's Mobility Zakus, and it's a bit of an homage to MSV, which the base kit is from. I realized pretty early on that weathering would be light to non-existent, just because of the subject matter. I did want to break up the plastic finish though, so I'm adding a bit of patina. This starts off with speckling, in this case a dark brown, and then with a flat brush streaking all of the specks down to create a patina. I'm really working this back and forth and making sure that it isn't too much. As a result, I do build this up with a few passes. Because I'm using a wash for speckling, I do have some more time to work. It dries a little slower than normal paint, which really helps for this sort of application. Using a wash, as well as the semi-gloss underneath, allows me to correct areas where I feel things got too heavy. And since the wash is a water-based acrylic, whenever I do any cleanup, I don't run the risk of cracking plastic. I wanted to add some chipping, but because I'm keeping the Amazing as a Build Fighters kit, I wanted the chipping to reflect a long series of Gunpla battles. First, I used sponge chipping with a light gray paint to show the heaviest chipping, which went all the way through to the primer. The Build Fighters anime shows that any damage a Gunpla receives in battle transfers to the actual kit itself, so I feel this is appropriate. I haven't actually done sponge chipping in a while, so I'm trying to be as sparing as possible. I feel like this was a step where things could have gotten messed up and the whole model would have been ruined. But this was how I did chipping when I first built models, so it was pretty nice to do again. I feel sponge chipping is a technique associated with beginners, so as a result, people try to level up to brush painted chips as quickly as possible. Because of this, I feel like it's an underrated technique. Now I'm just using some paints which are pretty close matches to the plastic colors to paint over the largest of the chips. I don't want an exact match because I want these to be seen if you look close enough, but blend in if you're casually viewing the kit. The red I used was just Vallejo's basic red out of the bottle. It's a pretty perfect match, and it's a really nice color. This pink shade was one I had to mix up, and was one of those mixtures where I was shooting in the dark. As a result, I don't remember the mixing ratio, but I will try to include some references if I can remember the paints I used. Although I have painted a kit in ShareAlike colors, which this kit is a close approximate of, the ones I did were a little darker. So while mixing this color, I was actually using the runners as my guideline. Although the weathering I did was super minimal, it did slightly darken the plastic, so this color will hopefully stand out, but not too much. I wanted some very subtle speckling to break up the finish, so I used my brown wash. However, I don't shake up the bottle before using. This lets the brown pigment settle at the bottom, leaving me with the gray wash instead. This does go better with the red and pink, and it doesn't stand out too much, which is what I wanted. This is what the kit looks like out of the box, and this is what it looks like after a little work. It was really nice to build another Zaku. I honestly feel like it's been forever since I worked on one. Even though my internet name is Zaku Farm, I will be fixing that. The result isn't perfect, but I did learn some things which will help the next time I try out bare plastic weathering. As usual, this isn't meant to be a definite verdict on what you should be doing with your own Gunpla, but a look into my own process. If you liked the video, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next video, whenever that is.